Morning, everybody. Welcome to the introduction to the Local Energy Markets Alliance, and thank you for joining us early on this Wednesday morning. I'm going to just do a few housekeeping items and introduce ourselves as well before we get into the bulk of the session. Next slide, please. So for this webinar session today, you're going to hear from a lot of speakers. And so what we would like to ask is that if you can please keep your cameras and your mics off throughout the bulk of the session. There will be an opportunity towards the end of the session where you can ask questions live on screen, and we can field those questions for you. We are also recording this session, so you should see that it is recording. So hopefully you're comfortable with that, and if you're not comfortable with that, then obviously you can decide whether you want to stay in the meeting or not. One unfortunate point is that in the building that we're in today, we have a fire alarm test, and that fire alarm test cannot be moved. And so at about 11:30, you might hear a loud alarm, and we will try to mute at that point, but unfortunately we'll have to endure that. Next slide, please. So what are we going to be covering today in today's webinar, introducing the Local Energy Markets Alliance? So we're going to start with Simon, who's here on my right, who's going to be introducing the structure and objectives of LEMA. And also Dave Sowden on my left is going to continue to talk about how LEMA was formed and how the business operates. I will then come back and speak to you a little bit further about the benefits of joining LEMA and its programme of work, and also I'll talk about the membership and how you can join and become part of LEMA. We're then going to have two panel sessions through the middle of the session. And the first one's going to be chaired by Jeanette Wood, and she's going to be joined by Cheryl Harles, Lauren Schmitz and Louisa Matos, and they're going to be talking about the barriers and challenges to achieving net zero through local energy systems. We're then going to move on to a second panel session, and that's going to be chaired by Philip Lewis, and Philip will be joined by Nigel Besant, Barry Lynham and Ian Scougal, and they're going to be talking about the solutions that LEMA could deliver to enable commercially sustainable markets for local energy systems. We'll round off with some next steps from Simon, and then also we have an opportunity then to field some questions live from you guys. And then we'll finish off with a closing statement from the co-founder of LEMA, Miriam Atkin. I'm now going to hand over to Simon Anderson, who's going to give a more detailed introduction to LEMA.
Good morning, everyone. And I'd like to start by saying thank you very much to Gemserv for doing this. Back in the summer, a number of us met at Leeds Castle, and one of the recommendations out of that was that we set up an alliance. In October, Gemserv and ourselves signed a memorandum of understanding to do that, and today we're announcing that alliance, which is the Local Energy Market Alliance. I wanted to touch on a couple of things about the Market Alliance itself. First of all, it is about generating commercial opportunities. So it is about taking our products to market, and we have got together a group of people which include suppliers, buyers, and also enablers. And it's quite unusual to get all these people together in one place, which is one of the things we're trying to do. The second thing is that this is business-led. It is about collectively working out how do we best play the cards that we have in our hand at the moment. It is not about trying to get the government to give us better cards, although that would be nice. It is very pragmatic about getting on and doing something now. Next slide, please. So our starting point is that decarbonised buildings cannot be built at scale if they overload the energy system, or for that matter, if they don't provide an attractive financial proposition to property developers and consumers alike. As the electricity grids become more congested, so new developments are struggling to connect. In fact, this situation is liable to get worse quite quickly, as demand increases faster than the grid has the ability to strengthen. Now, flexibility markets can offer some relief, but other solutions are needed. Solutions such as smart local energy systems, which is what we're talking about here. The upfront cost of such systems is quite high. So what we need to do to pay for it is to bring together multiple value elements and stack those. That means finding a commonly accepted formula for doing that and doing it in a fair and systematic way. And that's also, again, back to being fair for the end users. And the good news is that the market value, the technology, the systems are largely there already. What is not and what needs to be done is to look at the business systems that will enable these things to be delivered and implemented. And that's what LEMA has been founded for. How are we going to do that? Well, we intend to look at the common market barriers to commercializations and collectively find solutions to that and gain acceptance of those solutions so that we can bring together common organizations who have complementary capabilities and parallel interests. It's quite a unique opportunity for businesses to commercialize their innovations. And it is not a talking shop. It is expected to be a 3-year program of work, of which we'll talk about more later on today. Next slide. So just touching a little bit on why do we need LEMA. Markets generally don't form themselves, or if they do, it takes quite some time to do so. More often than not, there is some initiative that is taken that does that, and that's what we're trying to do here. What we need to do is to fill that gap between the relatively low volumes of early adopters and the mass market, which you get when you have an established market. It's what we call the enterprise market, and that's what we're trying to set up and do here. A lot of that is about business integration. So in the same way that you have systems integration, which integrate technologies, you need business integration that integrate the companies in order to deliver the solution. So that's the second thing we're looking at. And thirdly, we need to look at a local perspective. The challenge with doing multiple things in multiple different locations is that there are multiple people, multiple organizations all involved in it. And if everybody has to start from scratch each time, there's a huge time and effort required in doing that. So what we are hoping to do is to optimize it and streamline that so that we can do it quicker, faster, and therefore build a growth market. So as I say, we're very grateful to Gemserv for doing this and helping us set this up. They've got considerable experience in doing this, and in particular, Dave Sourden has done this for them a couple of times. So I'm now going to hand over to Dave to introduce how we're going to set up LEMA. Thank you.
Okay, so just going to touch on governance, really just to convey that we're setting this up in a way that protects the members. It is already registered as a company limited by guarantee. So people participating when they join LEMA, they will become members of that company, guarantors, and their liability is limited to £1. And that's a fairly standard model for this type of organisation. And in that sense, it looks a bit like a trade association. But as Simon has said, this is commercially driven. This is not a trade association. It has a different purpose. It's not there as a lobbying organisation. It's there to facilitate the development of market instruments. But the model suits this purpose quite well. As Simon's mentioned, we've done this several times before, and indeed we run other trade associations and collective organisations that adopt a similar model. So we've already got off-the-shelf governance models, statutes, and membership agreements that we're adapting to fit this purpose. So you're in the hands of an experienced team running this type of organisation, and the nature of that involvement by the members is going to be through several common interest groups, and these will be the main thematic working groups, which will come on to others will come on to talk about in more detail, with bi-alliance annual meetings, alliance meetings to oversee that work and direct delivery. And the intention will also be to have an annual conference where we bring not just the membership together, but a much broader audience as well. And I think the observation that I would make going through this process is that we've got excellent complementary skill sets between Gemserv and Traxis. We've got the experience in Traxis and leadership from people who've held very senior roles and run companies out there in the marketplace during their careers, and Gemserv is the administrative function with the experience in governance, process, and running the administration side and the secretariat. So you're in good hands.
Okay, if we move to the next slide. Simon and David spoke about this being an alliance of members and it being a programme of work, and that's exactly how we want to pitch LEMA. We've said that LEMA is not a talking shop, and LEMA is set aside very differently from a trade association, for example. We are looking at establishing a defined programme of work. Apologies. Yes, so we're looking to define an established programme of work, and we're looking to build that work plan with the members of LEMA as they come and join LEMA. Our intention is to start off LEMA with a focus in the GB market, and that's where we've originally set up LEMA from. But we have lots of member interest from across Europe, and already we are seeing people who will be participating, for example, in today's panel sessions with interests from outside of GB and then stretching into Europe as well. And so it's our consideration that whilst we'll start in the UK, we will make steps to expand the objectives of LEMA and what it's trying to achieve in establishing markets for local energy systems. Potentially looking at the Netherlands next as a good example of where similarly this challenge could be mitigated.
But that could change.
But that could change. Yes, actually. So the programme of work we're looking is conceptually laid out in the slide here. Like I said, we're looking to work with members to establish what the defined work plan is. But our sort of prevailing view and an approach to starting off LEMA is that we'll be looking at a 3-year programme of work where we commence with developing our propositions within 2024. So we're looking to really kickstart LEMA in 2024. And in developing propositions, we'll be looking more at developing the concepts of LEMA and developing the business models that support those local energy markets. Through into 2025, we'll start to look at contractualizing, and we'll start to define those common structures that such a local energy systems market requires, and we'll start with members delivering the tangible products and documents and structures that enable those contractual frameworks to work in the real world. And then looking forward all the way through to 2026, we will move into a proving period, and then looking to sell and repeat local energy system markets across the UK and, like I said, beyond into Europe. There's a view from us that LEMA has to offer its members tangible benefits to being a member of LEMA, and that comes from us through establishing deliverables. And in establishing these markets, we must have these tangible deliverables in place. So I won't read through all of the ones that we've laid out on the slides here, but we're very, very conscious that in order to provide value back to LEMA's prospective members, we need to be working towards these defined products.
If I could just come in there, I think one of the things that common interest groups will actually be doing is establishing exactly what deliverables are needed. So at this stage, this is just a starting point of ideas.
Yeah. So on the next slide, I come on to talking about the common interest groups that Simon just referred to. So as any program of work needs, it needs to have a good structure to it, and it has, and our structure that we would like to put to it is establishing what we call common interest groups. And these common interest groups are formed around the key building blocks that will establish local energy system markets. In order to ensure that common interest groups don't inadvertently and excessively take up the time and effort of LEMA members, we've sought to really hone them down into those critical areas, and then also kind of bundle up those common interest groups into kind of mutually collective common interest groups. So, for example, we've got 3 pairs that we're looking to deliver and roll out. So pair 1 being a networks common interest group joined with a data and platform common interest group. And then a second pair of common interest groups, which is a customer proposition and also a benefit qualification and economics customer interest group. And then finally, pair 3, which would be framework contracts and governance. Members will be able to, like Simon says, help establish what the work plan for each one of these common interest groups is and what it's looking to bring to LEMA. And we also expect that members who join these common interest groups will form their own bonds with each other. You know, we're looking here at establishing a market, and that's an important element to LEMA. And so building those bonds between you as organisations to help create that market is important.
And we have started with the networks common interest group. Put a toe in the water. We're just starting to work out how we run these things, but we'll be getting onto that in earnest in the new year.
So if we move on, membership, so LEMA is a membership organisation. So we're looking to build a baseline membership that will help you achieve the objectives of LEMA and build a market. So as such, we've established a membership structure, and I'll come on to what that membership structure looks like from a commercial perspective in a minute. But just to start off with that, we established 3 tiers of membership to LEMA. First one is a standard business membership, and this goes for the lion's share of organisations that we will be looking to engage to join LEMA. And so as a standard business member, we're proposing that you would have 2 seats at all of the meetings that LEMA holds. So that's the common interest groups and also the events that we hold as well. You will be able to participate, but also be in receipt of and benefit from the products which I described on the previous slides. You will have access to all of LEMA's outputs, and also you'll be able to participate in what we're calling marketing services, which is enabling you to access the other players within the LEMA array and all of the organisations that can help establish markets. The second tier of membership is a public sector membership, and this is slightly different because it's orientated more specifically at sort of council type setups. These will be with slightly reduced fees, just pointing towards the different type of value relationships that LEMA would have with those organisations. And then the final type of membership is a non-participatory, non-voting observer type membership, which we will reserve specifically for government type organisations and regulatory type organisations that will have an interest in following the progress of LEMA. We are also looking to establish foundation members. We do already have some foundation members that I don't think we're announcing them today, but we're happy to say that we've established some foundation members. What we're offering foundation members is an opportunity to join the LEMA advisory board and help steer the objectives of LEMA and where it goes in the future. For that, we would ask that foundation members commit to a 2-year membership with LEMA, and then we get the benefit of you joining us and your commitment for 2 years. You get the benefit of being able to steer what LEMA's direction is.
So if I could just come in there again, I said before the formal launch we're looking at is spring, so probably March next year. And fortuitously, I'd like to say it's right at the point of changeover of budgets. So if you want to get budgets in for this year or next year, we can cater around that as well.
Excellent. So if we move on, here's the obviously slide that lots of people will be keenly interested in, is our structure of costs and pricing for members. So I've laid out a business membership, which on this slide is referenced as the full alliance membership, and then the other memberships that I mentioned are down at the bottom, classified as other memberships. Within our standard business membership or the full alliance membership, we've structured this on a tiered basis, and the reason why we've done this is because we understand that there are organisations come in different shapes and sizes, and particularly have different turnover. And our perspective on that is that the larger you are as an organisation, the more you stand to benefit from the establishment of local energy system markets, and therefore we structured the pricing to accommodate enabling those small players to participate, and also reflecting the benefits that they would get out of LEMA. So our tiers, we have 5 tiers, and the 4 main ones are starting with micro businesses who have a less than £1 million turnover. That would be a £2,000 annual membership fee, and that's without VAT, so £2,000 minus VAT. Not plus VAT, sorry. And tier 2 is for small businesses, which is £6,000 per year, and that's reflective of an organisation that has a less than £10 million turnover. Then for medium businesses, we would have a membership fee at £9,000 per year, and that would be reflective of an organisation with less than £50 million turnover. And then the large business grouping for membership pricing would be £14,000 a year with over £50 million turnover. We are also conscious that lots of organisations are connected with each other through subsidiaries and subcontract organisations. So we also are happy to talk about a multi-business membership pricing, and we can do that through negotiation directly with the organisation. For the public sector membership, there will be a pricing of £5,000 per year. And then observers, we reserve as being free, but that's specifically for government.
As Dave said earlier on, this is a not-for-profit organisation, so these fees are purely for the administration of the alliance. And there will also be a little bit of a surplus put in there, and that's to pay for particular things like customer research that the members might wish to do. So there's a bit of flexibility in that. But as I say, it's not a profit-making organisation at all.
Just to echo that, I mean, when we get into parts of the work programme, it's possible that we'll need to commission external advice. So if we move into model contracts, for example, we'll need legal assistance with that. So we'll look to set aside some funds. And that will become apparent as we work up the detail of the work programmes through the common interest groups.
Should be a lot more cost effective to do this collaboratively than trying to do it yourselves. Yeah. I think that's God's principle.
And that's core to the proposition. Yeah.
So talking of collaboration, we've come to the end of the introductory elements of talking about LEMA. We're now going to move on to some more engaging panel sessions with some of our prospective members who will be talking to you about the challenges that LEMA is trying to resolve, and also to discuss some of the solutions. We do have a moment for Q&A, but I think what I would like to do is because they're through the chat, if we can start with the panel sessions, then I can review the Q&A and then present those questions towards the end of the session. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a little bit of a switch around. So if you just bear with us while we move seats, and the panel session will form shortly.
My two panelists in the Zoom have joined, and we've got one online as well. You too. Yes, I can see. Great. Well, thank you for that introduction, and welcome to this first panel session. My name's Janet Wood. I'm a journalist in the energy industry, the editor of New Power, but I've been covering the industry for a long time. I'm very excited to see what's happening now as people are become active participants in the energy industry, starting with the big users and now moving down to even the very smallest participants and into local energy markets. And obviously that's something that's very difficult to do. So I'm really pleased to see that this initiative is being taken. And what we're going to do in this panel session is talk to three people who are perhaps part of what Simon's called the enterprise market. They're certainly enterprising, and hear something of their experiences and what they hope to get from LEMA, and hopefully that will strike a chord with some of the experience that you've got for the people attending. So I've got three panelists. Cheryl Hiles from Communities for Renewables, and I'm reading my own writing here, and also Director of Energy Capital at the West Midlands Combined Authority. Good, I read that right. Lawrence Schmidt to my right, who is the Head of Utilities and European Development at DC Bell and President of Digital for Grids. And online, we have Louisa Matos, who is co-founder of Clean Watts. I'm going to get them each to explain a little bit of something about what these organisations do. So let's kick off, in fact. Louisa, let's start with you. I think it's safest to start with people who are online, just in case. Perhaps you'd like to tell us a little bit about your organisation and why you are supporting LEMA.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here, for inviting to this session. And yes, so Clean Watts, what we are doing and the focus that we have been putting on renewable energy communities, it's very close to what we see as as a local energy market. So it makes a lot of sense for us to be connected with LEMA initiative because we see as a tool and supporting element to go beyond a couple of challenges and barriers that we are still looking at the market. So basically, Clean Watts, we are developing, managing renewable energy communities in Europe. We have also initiatives on the microgrids in the US. Right now, we have about 250 contracts signed and some of like around 50 already being under execution to ignite renewable energy communities. So basically what this means, and I'm not sure if the audience are familiar with the concept, but basically it's the possibility for us to generate or install a renewable generation power plant in an energy community. Can be in a big rooftop, for instance, of a building or in multiple buildings. And then the surplus of this generation, we are able to share locally with the consumers depending on the geography. The distance can be different, but basically it's this possibility by using the existing distribution grid. So basically we are not installing new wires or anything. We are using an existing grid. We have the legal framework to actually use it. And depending on the country, in some cases, we are exempted to pay the network fees. In some other countries, like Portugal, for instance, we pay the network fee related with the grid that we are using. If it's low voltage, we are just paying this part of the grid. So it makes a lot of sense in terms of business opportunity to actually deploy these projects. And we are able to bring external financiers to fund the CapEx element. So when we are installing the generation, and then we have a viable business model that allows us to give like savings, like 20%, 30% savings for the members of the community that are using that energy, and at the same time be able to pay back the investment that was done by external financiers. So the business model, it's really interesting. The benefits for all the stakeholders are really there and evident as well. Still, we have some couple of barriers, but I guess in the short term, I'll be able to speak to them.
Yes, we're going to talk about the barriers in a minute, but let me pass on now to Cheryl Miles to talk a bit about the organisation and what you hope to get from LEMA.
Hey, thank you very much, and hello everyone. It's lovely to be here. As we said, my name's Cheryl Miles. I'm Director of Energy Capital at the West Midlands Combined Authority. We have come from a partnership background, so obviously working collaboratively is one of the key things, an enabler to overcome some of the barriers that exist in this market. From the perspective of being in the public sector, our vision is for a just energy transition, one that both enables us to meet the needs of our diverse communities, to enable timely decarbonisation. We all have different decarbonisation objectives and timescales that we're working to, and to allow the market of sort of clean tech and innovation to thrive. So that's the sort of perspective we're coming from. Those objectives align very nicely with those of LEMA. In the absence of regulation, we tend to see the market essentially delivering for the wealthy, and net zero could end up being a privilege of the wealthy if we're not careful. So we are looking at this from the perspective of how do we go from those early adopters, the innovation projects. We've worked on lots and lots of innovation projects with many partners. We need to get that into business as usual, and we need to start seeing the benefits of net zero affecting everybody. So that's kind of where we're coming from. I think the technology is there. We see a lot of solutions. We know that they're all kind of lying in wait. The market's lying in wait for the transition to happen. But actually the commercial elements, the really tricky bits that if we can get right, that would be a huge shift in the way in which the market operates. And so for us, we didn't see the point of the market talking to themselves. We wanted to come along and be part of the conversation and make sure that both those who are enablers, such as ourselves, the regulatory market, and businesses are all talking together to try and overcome some of the barriers that we're looking to achieve through them.
That's great. Thanks, Cheryl. And finally, Lord, can I invite you to see you?
Yes, so thanks for the invitation today. I'm working for Decibel, which was originally founded and formed in Canada, and we focus on home energy, mostly, where we are looking at better way of integrating solar PV storage and the bidirectional charging of EVs all together. So we started our journey in facilitating business and basically deployment for consumers, and we are heading towards consumer playing a certain role into energy markets. And so through the various early demonstration projects which we had in the UK with Innovate UK, but also in Europe, we really see the local area becoming a critical stepping stone, I would say, for the deployments of product like ours, mostly for two reasons. The first one is the fact that grid are a complex infrastructure to expand. We are nowadays talking everywhere about major expansion. I was yesterday in an event in Brussels talking about 600 billion to be invested in the next 20 years. I think what happens is everyone is looking at that as the easy way, but the reality is showing that it's very hard to expand this grid infrastructure. And so basically finding ways of non-wired connection, flexible connection, and new ways of interacting with consumers from the grid operator through local markets is a very, very important step. The other element is more a commercial element, seen from our side as basically a B2C company. And what we clearly see is the community effect, which can exist in the local energy markets is simply if you are looking to the deployment of EV and PV, this clearly goes through communities and through the engagement of certain city authorities wishing to play a role in the energy transition and to facilitate and I would say be a benchmark across cities. So this is really these two elements which needs to be brought together. I've been a veteran in the microgrids industry. I've won a award of IEEE probably 10 years ago on city microgrids. That's what I learned. It did not develop primarily because there was a commercial framework missing. And I hope with the LEMA, we can really put together the best brains so that we can move forward in the new area.
Great, thanks, Lawrence. And I think we're already hearing some of the huge positives of this opportunity about bringing communities together and allowing them to effectively do the sales job on local energy markets. And I'm sure we can all think of areas near where we live where one EV sale has interested the neighbours in also getting EVs, or solar panels have interested other neighbours in getting solar panels. This kind of word of mouth sort of positivity really makes a difference. But also we're hearing some of the things that have to be grappled with to bring these things to fruition: the finance, the legal framework, the grid, the business models. All of these issues have got to be dealt with. So let's come back to the panel again and ask, well, these are all common market barriers to introducing these local markets. Where do you see LEMA being able to add value to help dissolve those barriers? And I think we'll take the same route. Louisa, do you want to say a few words about that?
Sure. Thank you. So we do have those barriers, as you mentioned, from legal framework to actually also access to capital. And maybe this is one of the topics that I think might make sense. So when you think about an energy community, we can think in the local energy market, we can think about different kind of end users. So you have a few end users that actually have the funds to invest themselves in some PV or some flexibility connection like batteries, EV chargers, etc. And that's fantastic because they can connect with an energy community or local energy market and actually add value to their own investment. But then you have other end users that might be in a vulnerable situation. We have energy poverty growing, so we need to address also those topics. And to do that, we need to capture the right capital to deploy in these local energy markets to help finance the capex element so that anyone can be part of a local energy market without having the restriction of having or not enough budget on their side. So from our experience, and I can share with you, there is available capital in the market to be deployed on renewables, on these flexibility opportunities. However, when we think about like small projects, right, then you get to the barriers about how we can actually create a framework that that help them assess the risk connected with the implementation of a local energy market with the, for instance, energy community. And that's something that we have been struggling because we do realize that the standard investment profile that you would have in a big power plant, for instance, or even with a PPA when you are installing just in one client that will consume, like self-consume that energy, it's completely different when you have an energy community where you have multiple consumers that will have some dynamism. You might have people leaving and some other people joining, it's a free market, and that's completely new from the perspective of an investor. So we need to build, the common framework and contracts that will help attract capital in a way that they can trust and lower the risk on these kind of investments. So I believe that with time we'll be able to show that this is a trustful investment with low risk. But when it's new, it's not easy to actually show that and then scale. So I would point out this one as a contribution from LEMA to support with a common framework.
Yes, I think that's great. I mean, I think to replicate these small projects, they've got to be low cost, a very standard framework, and people have got to see some successes if you're going to bring new people in to join these organisations. So I think that leads us straight on, actually, that sort of implication of a just transition. And as you were talking about, the kind of people who are in fuel poverty and the kind of people who have got, some money to invest. And that brings me straight back to Cheryl to talk about the barriers that you have been able to help address.
Thank you. Yeah, totally build on those points already made. So from our perspective, we come at these sorts of challenges from a place-based perspective. We are a place, we represent a place, and we represent citizens within that place. The challenge is always how we've just had how to scale up. So you can do things at a very, very small scale, but how do you make that available to everybody? So we're in the privileged position at the moment as we've just been identified as a net zero accelerator pilot by government. The announcement came out last week, which is great. So we now are in a position where we're looking exactly at some of these challenges. How do we bring together the different types of finance that we've heard are available? So we need grant to target at those most in need. We need to capture the outcomes that people benefit from when it comes to these sorts of investments. That's one of the clear things we've seen through all of our innovation projects, that there are huge sort of externalities, if you're an economist. There are lots of benefits to communities that weren't necessarily the focus of what that investment was designed for. And we somehow need to put a price on that so that we can value it and therefore harness additional capital towards supporting this kind of thing. And then that needs to go alongside with the traditional private finance, because we certainly know that government's not in a position to be able to pay for this kind of transition. So we need to see that, and that's the focus of this accelerator that we'll be working on, and we want to sort of bring that knowledge and share it with as many people as we can, hence sort of participating in this kind of environment where we can start to give confidence to those who we work with to say, actually, the market will deliver. That's the biggest challenge, I think, that we face at the moment, where public sector might be trying to drive higher standards or better delivery, trying to get some of those social outcomes from the investments that we make. But we often come across kind of existing supply chains, existing partnerships that sort of say, oh, that, you know, that's not, with market's not quite ready yet, it might cost us too much. And actually that's what we need to see this kind of group come together and say, no, the market is ready, you're just talking to the wrong people. There are solutions out there, and let's show them, show that they can be commercially viable and they can help deliver the objectives that we set out for our communities. So that's what hopefully will be achieved.
That sounds brilliant. It certainly sounds as if there's things to go at, and maybe a lot of you've got something to add to that list as regards barriers.
Sure, there is unfortunately quite a few barriers still. The third one I would mention is we see regulation moving pretty fast on these topics, and the UK is a good example of GEM is known as the forward-looking regulator into the energy space, generally speaking, and we do see this happening. The difficulty is the regulator tends to think still in silos, so local flexibility market on one side, flexible connection on another side, balancing market on the third side, and the trick is to stack revenues. That's what's going to make the business model work. And I hope this group can really be pragmatic into proposing ways to combine these revenues together for unlocking new business model. I think that's very important. The second one I would like to take is a technology barrier here, and I hope we can, into this organization, think a new way to develop a platform. You saw on the slide the platform is going to be probably a central element to the operationalization of this framework. This platform is going to be multi-sided, so users from different environments. And the big winners on multi-sided platforms today, if you look, are all working in partnerships, are developing apps, are kind of co-constructing architecture together. So I hope we can really move to the next step of digital multi-sided platform, where we can take advantage of all the players around the table, which together really bring differentiation rather than building a whole legacy verticalized hard to adapt systems. So that's for us also an important element.
That's great. Thanks very much, Laura. And that was the first time I think today that I've heard the word app. And that I expect to hear a lot, in fact, when we're getting into these kind of local energy markets where people have got to find them. So they've got to be approachable for the communities. And I think we have just another minute or two before we wrap up. And I wanted to bring a sort of flavour of the kinds of groups that you thought might be the early adopters of this kind of initiative. Because when I think about communities, I can think about local organisations, a tower block, for example, or a housing estate, or I can think about other types of communities, whether that is a group of houses around a large building or a small industrial estate with perhaps some micro businesses on it, and maybe even communities who are not directly next to each other. Members of a sports club who all want to get together. They've all got a bit of PV. And so I'd be interested to know something from you about what you think is the size of the potential market out there. Where might be some early groups that we might address? And I think, Louisa, you said you had something like 250 already in the pipeline. What are you thinking about the total scale of the opportunity here?
Yeah, so we have, in terms of types of communities, actually it's quite big, the different kind of combination that we can have. So for instance, we started 2 years ago with a program that we called 100 Villages. Like this was a program actually addressing the topic of energy poverty, rural areas. And for that one, what we did was we partnered with like local municipalities. They didn't need to be involved, but they would function as a kind of a local like sponsor, not in the sense of money, but actually bringing trust to people from local to understand what was the opportunity for them to be part of an energy community. And with this one, we used then, some of the buildings, for instance, with the local charities, institutions that had bigger buildings. And then we engaged with a couple of residential and small businesses in the community. So this is one typical configuration. But then we launched also other initiatives, for instance, with business parks. So we can actually go and have this opportunity, talk about this opportunity with them, because it makes sense to, in a certain location with industrial park, to be able to generate locally and consume locally that energy and share those benefits. In some cases, the companies, they themselves invest in the renewables and they are able to share among themselves. The ideal situation is actually when we have a mix of consumption profiles. If you have some businesses and some residentials, it's an ideal situation, because you'll have weekends where the businesses are not operating and you have people at home spending more, using more energy, and also during the day and the peak hours. So in terms of sizing, I would say that ideally we would have, a capacity like 500 kilowatt peak or 1 mega or even more, because it gives you more economies of scale to actually address more consumers in a certain location. However, you can actually do it with a smaller power plant and have a 50 kilowatt peak, for instance, and do a tiny community. That's fine. It's more about, yeah, exactly, and it will become more economically interesting and viable if you have some bigger capacity, and also to bring, attract capital to invest, and that's more interesting. But I think the message here is,
sorry to break in. I think I can already see some points where you're going to be, some kind of common interest groups with Cheryl there, because some of those seem, I think, to chime very much with what you might have. Did you want to say anything about the potential, just to wrap up?
Just very quickly, if I may. We've worked to support community energy for a long time, and my other hat is working for a community interest company as director to support what they're doing, because actually it's that bottom up element that is really important, and you often see those ideas that you wouldn't even kind of plan if you were looking at it from a strategic perspective. But in the West Midlands, we've been specifically trying to establish net zero neighbourhoods, we're calling them, where you go out and engage with the community based on the issues that are important to them. Because net zero isn't always the issue that's important to them. And I think that's an important thing to remember. And the scale, the whole point of what we're looking at doing is taking this 7 communities that we're sort of starting to work with and taking that all the way up to every community across the region. Ultimately, that's where we want to get to. And every solution is going to be different, which is why it's a huge market. It's a big opportunity for all of the different parties to get involved. So I think that's the scale is huge.
Yeah, and that comes along just to maybe in one word, how big are they going to go?
So for us, we need three anchors for such development. The first one is an anchor client, and you don't need so many actually. And we think the EV drivers are very interesting anchor clients. The second one is an anchor community managers, and we think cities are very important to get the snowball effect. And the third anchor we should not forget is a grid operator. And we need a smart grid operator moving forward into that space. We are not against grids. We are finding ways to marry the two in an optimum way. That's, I think, what we should try to do.
That's great. So I think it's all about solutions at this point. And actually that brings me very nicely to our next, to introduce the next panel session, which is going to be chaired by Philip Lewis. So I think I'd like to thank my panel members for the really enthusiastic and exciting view of the opportunities that we've got out there and how they hope that LEMA can help that bring together. And I will pass over to Philip to talk about some of the solutions.
Thank you.
Thank you by my speaker. So that was a really great discussion, and I think it leads in perfectly well to the discussion that we're going to have now. And okay, so actually I'm going to sit in the middle. I'm just going to have two here, and we have two online. And I'd just like to, I'll give everyone a chance to introduce themselves in just a second. And just to say that, as we heard just a moment ago from Laurent, we heard that the importance of the network operator. And luckily we have a network operator here today. So I'd just like to first of all introduce the panel that we have here. So we have Nigel Besant from SSE Networks, who's head of operations. We also have Barry Lynham, who's managing director for Canal Energy Solutions, and also Ian Skugel, who is product manager at Electrolink. I'll let them say a little bit about what they're doing. But just to say that what is really important, as we've heard already, is the importance of this local energy market to be commercialized, to be scaled, and to be commercially viable in itself. Now, when I'm talking about the local energy market, I'm talking about the local energy system and the market of players, as we just heard, and the different roles that they play and the way that they work together in order to achieve all of this that we've been talking about. So what I want to do now is to hear from a few examples of those players that are in the market. One of them essentially is, I guess you could say, is more of a customer, the network company. We'll hear more in a moment, but also the other players that are providing some capabilities into that kind of program. And these are just two other examples, but there are many more, of course, that will be in this alliance. So just as a very quick heads up, just to say that in 5 minutes at past, we will actually have a loud awakening. So if you're not awake, any of you in the audience, you will be in a moment. But just to say that don't be surprised when that happens. We'll just momentarily break for that alarm that will be going off, the fire alarm. I don't know how long it goes on for, maybe 5 seconds. Okay, so just long enough to wake you up. And but in the meantime, I think we'll just start off actually with Nigel. And just to say that from the perspective, and feel free to introduce and contextualize at the beginning, but just to say that from the perspective of a network operator, and a large network operator, I mean, you have, I think, 4 million customers or something like that. That's a lot of customers. You're probably more interested in dealing with scale, right? And dealing with, you've got a lot of partners that you're dealing with around the networks. But just to think from your perspective, what is it that actually you see as necessary for you as a network operator to see in terms of local energy systems to help you operate those local energy systems in this changing environment with increased congestion and so on? What is it that you want, and is there something that's not already available in that? You have access, of course, to capacity markets. You have your own capabilities to control load, but just trying to understand also what it is that you feel you need, what isn't there, but also understanding what it is that you feel that you can provide in terms of those partnerships as well.
Great. That's a long shopping list. Let's see how we do. You might need to prompt me a little bit as we go through. But yes, hello, good morning, everybody. I'm Nigel Besant. I'm head of network operations in the DSO part of Scottish and Southern Electricity Networks. Bit of that context then. So Scottish and Southern Electricity Networks operates the network in the north of Scotland and the central south of England. That's roughly 1/3 of the land in GB, if you like. It's 4 million customers. That's roughly 1/6 of the customers across GB. So we serve some of the most beautiful and remote areas of the country, but also some of the most beautiful and dense areas of the country. So really see it from both perspectives there. And in a GB context, we talk about DNOs, we talk about DSOs. A DNO, of which I am part of, is about safe, reliable operation of our electricity network. So you can depend on it. You turn the lights on and it will happen. A DSO as part of that, and a clear, distinct, separate part, is about us being really focused on how we release capacity, and particularly to enable net zero using that efficient mix of flexibility, strategic investment, and really trying to get things out as quickly as we can. And that pace is really important. I think I would go as far as to say the future. Well, it's now. We do every year very detailed forecasts of how we think our network is going to be used and how that's developing. We call them distribution future energy scenarios. And if you took our analysis, bottom up, detailed, granular analysis built on on a national basis, but with local understanding of what's happening, if we went back to 2021. And what we thought the network would need to do by 2030, and then compare it to now, it's quite astonishing. So back in 2021, we thought by 2030, using the best information, but there'll be 10.9 gigawatts of distributed energy resources connecting to our network. The pipeline now, today, is 23.8 gigawatts. So there's amazing change there. Battery storage, likewise, we thought by 2030 it would be 2.3 gigawatts. The pipeline now, 8.8 gigawatts. Today, and you could say the same across a whole range of spectrums there. If you take it down to a more local or more domestic level, EV connection has risen threefold in the last 2 years in our network areas, and our southern areas 3 times the national average. So these changes are brilliant. They're happening now, and the things we plan to do, we need to accelerate. So we talk about our acceleration plan, our DSO acceleration plan. Please look that up, because you'll see many of the flavors that we need generally are also met through some of the specifics we're looking at in LEMA there. If you look at that plan in more general and our effective transition towards net zero, you'll see things around connections reform. The work we've been doing to support the ESO and unblocking some of those transmission connection queue aspects there. You'll see some of the work we have around strategic investments, but particularly around how do we accelerate the provision of what we'd call DSO services, use of flexibility. And I'd really characterize it in three words: smart, fair, and now. Now, smart is around flexibility services, about bringing innovation into BAU. And I'll just give you one example, as well, a parallel example, kind of relevant. Home Flex is something we've been innovating and creating with industry over the last wee while. It went live this autumn. And it's around building confidence for domestic customers, micro businesses, in using flexibility and providing flexibility services is the right thing for them. And you'll see for many of the users of the flexibility service, the ESO demand turn down service, you see most of those now are registered with Flex Assure. So building confidence amongst that user base there. Fair, and it's really interesting to hear that earlier panel debate as well. Fairness is absolutely essential. SSE, very proud to have the first just transition strategy from 2021. We've built that with our smart and fair thoughts around work with the Centre for Sustainable Energy, on our consumer capabilities, and more recently in our fair energy future work on what DEAR knows and our role we play as part of a broader ecosystem, and thinking about some of those vulnerabilities and other customers who could otherwise not be able to take fully part. And now, how to release that capacity faster. Now, LEMA and the LEMA concepts are really interesting here. It's about, yes, it will help us deliver net zero faster. It's about connecting customers with better use of technology. That's going to give a better experience for customers, warmer homes, cleaner transport, and lowering that requirement to the network capacity. And that all makes good sense. And it's how do we then bring those different parts together? So we have more attractive houses. Great. We'll have connections which are faster, good for the developer, good for a network operator, and potentially longer run increased participation in broader flexibility services. So what we're looking for is things which are smart, fair, and now.
Really great. Thanks a lot. Well put. And thinking, Ian, the importance of data in all of this. I mean, it's going to be extremely important to get. We hear very often from all sorts of players in this market that they don't have enough data or they need a lot of data for this. And certainly this, when we're talking about collaboration. Good, excellent. That was 5 seconds. Correct. So yeah, so when we're talking about the importance of collaboration, of course, it's even more because you've got data running through a lot of different players in this. So maybe just introduce contextualize a little bit first and your business, and I'd just love to hear from you, your perspective on this.
So my name's Ian. Obviously, I'm the product manager for energy market insights at Electrolink. And for those who aren't aware, Electrolink has been operating at the heart of the energy industry for the last 25 years. We were set up in 1998 at market deregulation by the network operators to provide a regulated data transfer service to all of the different players in the distribution and supply of electricity data. And so have been exchanging key operational data around meter readings, change of supplier, and so on, successfully across that part of our business for 25 years. And then in the last sort of 10, 11 years, have been leveraging that information to provide data and insight services to the wider market. And in that time, we've been working very hard with key stakeholders to understand the challenges of that and ensuring we have the right security governance around to ensure sufficient data protection and privacy concerns. And so that has allowed us over the period of time to generate a lot of the services that would provide the constituent parts for a data solution that can underpin a local energy network solution. Okay, so we have, for example, a series of API solutions that provide individual property level data that is currently being used at the national level by some flexibility partners, providers, to baseline their customers and analyze payments. We have generators using that data to track settlements, and housing associations using meter readings to validate the success of their energy efficiency implementations. We also have produced a national register of generation assets that supports DNOs and IDNOs and their understanding of what's on the network and where. And so all of that shows that the data is there. The data is out there in the industry that can support this kind of information. The art is going to be orchestrating all of those constituent parts into a single workable solution that provides benefit to all parties. And I think that's where, hopefully, and as part of LEMA and with our years of expertise and relationships that we've built up with all of the various parties, that Electrolink can really help push the solution forward. Part of our company mission statement is to leverage our expertise and our data to drive forward the innovation and support the transition to net zero. So to be a big part of that.
And that's exactly it, that experience, that expertise, and because it is going to be very hard, right? It is naturally very hard. You hear a lot about the fact that people don't want to share their energy, that you've got to get their consent. That's true also very much within the rest of Europe as well. But I guess that's it. Is your belief that there are ways in order to engage those communities, in order to be willing to sort of see the value in the necessity to share that data?
Well, we have a lot of solutions that provide customers are giving consent to, whether it's price comparison websites, energy efficiency providers, to access their data. And so with the right protections and securities around it, there was, they can get buy-in. The willingness is out there.
Excellent. I've got another question, but I'll go first to Barry. And thanks very much for joining us, Barry. And just to say that there's another side to this, isn't there? There's the side that actually we can understand the demand, control the demand. But actually, at the end of the day, we need the demand to be as low as possible to start with, don't we? It's very, very important that we don't sort of become fat and then have to sort of cut it. So from your perspective, but that I guess in a sense is what you're doing, right? You're thinking along the lines of, okay, well, we can, if we have less fat, we have less to control, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, we very much come from the demand side, very much different from the guys before who are much more on the supply side. Yeah, and I think, just to give a bit of background, Knauf Energy Solutions is what's famously called a one-stop shop for energy efficiency renovation, right? So we typically are trying to help mostly social housing owners to massively drop the energy demand in houses that we work with in projects. But what's unusual about us is that we're backed by a technology, a digital technology that allows us to understand the real energy efficiency of the homes before and after retrofit. And whilst that technology is interesting, it's not what's actually key. What's key is it finally gives us something we've never really had, which is visibility, sight in terms of energy efficiency. So energy efficiency, I think, has always been the kind of the ugly brother of energy production because it's, governments have always wanted to do lots of work in this space, but the energy efficiency industry has really in the built environment struggled to actually give real data on what actually we deliver. So whilst on the production side, you have very clear data on how much generation capacity is delivering over a year. On energy efficiency, we guess, we hope that the installation made some difference. We look across the whole market and see differences, but it's been hard to understand. And what we bring is that visibility, and that becomes quite important because that ability to see allows you to start asking questions and see what's going on. So I give an example. I come back to what Nigel was saying about looking at like the future demand side. Well, we recently did a housing estate in the north of the UK where we monitored a new build site, and we found that the energy demand was 250% higher than the energy performance certificate suggested across all the homes. Well, if you imagined as a DNO that you have a certain demand coming and it turns out to be 2.5 times higher, and that peak moment in the winter when the demand is coming is actually even higher because it's not flat across the year, it's massively oriented towards winter demand, you've massively underestimated what's coming on. Interestingly, when we redid the loft insulation correctly, we improved by 15% the energy efficiency of those homes in new build, right? So what we're starting to see is that actually by seeing, we start to see that, okay, buildings might not be where they expect to be, but also we start to see that delivering good quality retrofits and good quality new builds might actually get them to where they should be. And so there's this kind of difficulty in so we think that's quite important because we think until you can understand actually what your future demand is looking at, you can't also do interesting new ideas. Like, for example, we've talked a lot to the European Union and the European Commission about, as part of the electricity market design reform, about virtual generation. So rather than creating new generation capacity, could we get paid for taking generation demand out of the marketplace? But today we have no reward mechanisms that allow that long-term, so not variable hour by hour, but long-term reduction. So that's the kind of stuff that we're looking at. And yeah, so we of course believe as an energy efficiency company, the best place to start is with low demand.
Thanks a lot. Just one last question. I know we're short of time to all of you actually. So therefore, what you all just said, in a sense, we need to be able to understand where the demand is going, and also going back to what Louisa was saying as well. Important to understand where demand will be in the future, because people will have very different home setups. They will have very different demand curves. We tend to, at the moment, rely on very average demand curves and average assumptions about demand. We need, how do you see it? What, if you were to put it very, very quickly, what is it that is critical in terms of the data that we're going to need going forwards for this? Maybe start with you, Nigel.
Sure. So I would say there are three words which come together. It's data, trust, and transparency. And those three things are, well, they're built on each other, really. Trust, from our point of view, is around, I guess, our credibility and competence in operation, but also around knowing what we need to build for. And it's those examples there of things being done properly or not properly, Barry. Fantastic case study, really, in terms of how energy efficiency is a great solution, something we are very keen to see. And then in terms of perhaps the data that the energy industry already has, but doesn't always make best use of, really keen to see more of that. I mean, there's sometimes a perception we need to put more monitoring in. That's really important, but we've got a lot of it already. It's how do you join the dots? So cool.
Very good. I think exactly what Mike was saying. It's about knowing what you need to capture up front. A lot of what the industry suffers from is that innovation has moved faster than design, and so the understanding of what is out there is less good than it should be and holds some of these data solutions back. So good quality inventory and understanding what you are monitoring is as important as anything else. And something we can do together. So last word from you, Barry.
Yeah, I think for us, actually, one of the big challenges is heat pump rollout. So we think that there's some pretty concerning data about the COPs not being delivered again, which has impact on the grid, and I think there's a lot of misunderstanding or a lack of understanding of what's going wrong and what's going right. And we imagine that underperformance of the energy fabric of the house is probably part of that drive. But I think we really have to get much better over the next few years if we're going to massively decarbonize the energy system towards heat pumps and electrification of heat. That we understand when a house is ready for a heat pump, and how we actually, we scale the demand to the production, so that we get that we find that optimal space between energy efficiency work versus grid reinforcement and grid development.
Thank you very much. I'd love to talk much longer, but thanks so much, guys. And now I'll hand over to Simon.
Well, thank you, everybody. I never cease to be amazed at the momentum that is building in this market. Each time I go to various different conferences over this last year, each time I talk to people around here and listen to what people are saying, there is a lot going on, there's a lot moving, and a lot has to happen because it's moving very quickly. So thank you very much for that. And Nigel, I really like the fact that you've taken on the Traxis idea here of things come in three axes. That's what Traxis stands for. Thank you for that. And another element, a comment here. You may wonder why we have Barry on here, but we talked about stacking values. And this is a huge value that comes from the work that Barry does. And what he didn't have time to tell you about was looking at how to optimize the demand at the outset when you're planning a development, to make sure that you don't over-specify the grid or over-specify the heat pumps that are required. So there's a lot more to go on there. Anyway, time is much gone. I wanted to finish off by talking about the next steps for LEMA. You can see them up here. I'm not going to read through them all. I might just pick out a couple of important ones. Number 3 there, we're really keen to get an advisory board up and running because we want this to be run by the membership. We're here to facilitate that, but what the members need, as you've heard today, is what's really important. So we want to get that up and set up, and I'm looking to do that early in the new year, January or February. We have a thought about a launch seminar. So as I said earlier on, that we are going to launch officially in the spring. I'm targeting March at the moment, and I would like some feedback as well from the advisory panel and advisory board and everybody else, how you would like to see that operate. We had a very successful time at Leeds Castle, and I think it would be really quite good to try and repeat that, where people get to know each other. This is so much about networks and about people. It's not just about Zoom conference calls and so on. So I'm really keen to try and achieve that. And of course, the last one on there is really important. How do you go about joining LEMA? Well, we have an email set up there, but equally so, we're all in contact. So please just get hold of us, talk to us, and we'll be talking to you as well and chasing you as well. But let's try and get this momentum going and get this moving. So that's all that I had to say. We have got a number of people in the room here with us, as well as those online. So if there are any questions that have come from online, Gavin, can you tell us any? And are there any from the room for anybody who's spoken so far? So open the floor then. Surely somebody. We've obviously answered everything so very well. in which case we might well bring this. Oh, sorry, I've got Jeff. Sorry.
From a governance perspective, you talked about 3 years horizon, sort of plan of work over in 24, 26. Is that sort of hard and fast, as in you envisage having a 3-year life with a sort of a wrap up at close of 26? Repeat the question.
Yeah, so the question is about the governance and about this 3-year program, and is this hard and fast, and do we envisage wrapping up LEMA at the end of 3 years? This is an ambition, it's an expectation we're putting along that way. Personally, I think these things will, as use that word again, momentum will gain momentum, and actually we may be asked to be helping others set up by providing information and case studies about that to help people get started, move on. Mary, what do you feel?
Yeah, no, I would agree, and I think there'll be a natural evolution that will come, and that time frame might adapt. I think we have to be open to that.
Dave, you had.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that to say that whilst we've got an idea of the task list that we need to work through, and we think a 3-year horizon is about right, let's see if we've done the job. But we are looking at quite an elephant, which we have to eat one bite at a time, and let's take the first few bites and see where it goes, I think.
And I think the follow-up question to that really is, I like the real openness that this isn't a talking shop, it's commercially driven enterprise. I suppose to that extent, looking forward with a positive lens that this is extremely successful, is there a mechanism to protect those foundation members to make sure that the input is coming from them, they're putting input and intellectual property into this? How do you ensure then that the membership, late members, don't benefit from the input of the founding members effectively?
So the question there about intellectual property and how do we make sure that the late members don't benefit from the activity of the first members? It is a market, these things happen, and actually I think one of the most important things is to be there first, and the early mover advantage is fantastic in this opportunity. We will learn as we go along, and we will learn from people who come in at a later stage. I think this actually at the starting point is we want to get ahead, we want to get out there. All of us, well, not so much me now, but my previous company, have put an awful lot of money into generating new products, new service, innovation. We want to get a return for that, and we need a return for that now. So let's get out and do it.
And if we develop effectively what products for use, and they're developed in effect by the early membership, I don't see any reason why we can't put licensing arrangements in place for their use. There are commercial ways of doing that, but it's inevitable that by participation of something that has started to grow, people will get some benefit from what's gone before. You can't avoid that. There are certain instruments you can protect commercially, but you're never going to be able to protect all of the discussion.
And I think a good analogy would be Tesla. If you think of Tesla, they came in, they grew the market. The market didn't really exist before. They've grown that market for everyone else that has subsequently come into the market, but it hasn't detracted from them. They were in first in a sense at a scale, and they've learned from it, and they're still ahead in that sense. So I think that, but I think certainly we want to value, right, those members that being first will have a big advantage.
Yeah, and everything that we are doing is going to be open to the members, and I think this is not about creating a competitive framework. It is actually about generating something which lots of people can use. So time is marching on. If there are no more questions, then Miriam, would you like to close?
Thanks, Simon. So my job today is to wrap, and for those who don't know me, I'm Miriam Atkin from Gemserv, and we're really delighted actually to be part of LEMA and to be working with Traxis and hopefully a number of you as members of LEMA. It's been fascinating actually listening to the participants today, and I'd like to thank everybody who was involved in making today hopefully an interesting programme, and the huge range organisations who can benefit from and participate in LEMA. And to echo Simon's point, I think it's very much about collaboration, openness, and bringing the knowledge and expertise of across the whole industry sector to bear in this. So just to close then, I'd like to thank everybody for joining. I hope you found this interesting. Please feel free to reach out to us about membership or any other questions using the email, or as Simon said, follow one of us at an event or otherwise. And we'd be delighted to help you. And we look forward to seeing you at our events coming forward as well.
Thank you, everyone.